Bring Raheem Kassam on. He has a new piece up sort of walking through it. Raheem, you and I obviously know a lot of the influencers who were at the White House today. I'm sure right now people have seen the pictures, people holding up the binders, but it turns out that a lot of the information within those binders is nothing new. It's not really what the American people were hoping for. I'll let you sort of walk the audience through what happened today. And more importantly, where we kind of go from here, both your thoughts and where you think the White House will go from here.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Well, I hope the audience knows me well enough by now to realize that when I say it's not been a very good day at the White House, that actually means something that isn't like hearing it on MSNBC, CNN, or otherwise. It was described to me, this event that occurred this morning and into this afternoon, by one of the people present in the room as, I'll use the PG term, a clusterfudge, and I think that is probably the most accurate way of putting it. Most of the people in that room are very well known to me, and so I had the ability to pull together different bits of information as well as speak to White House sources and beyond about what happened today. And mostly the fingers of blame are being pointed at AG Pam Bondi and basically saying, look, this wasn't a planned rollout. This isn't something that we expected at this meeting. This was something that she almost kind of, her and her team unilaterally did without prior knowledge of the wider White House and the operation there, especially because they've got another big event there today, the arrival of Sir Keir Starmer and the UK-US conversations that were taking place today. But, you know, I've got this piece up at the National Pulse, walking people through it, and effectively it goes like this. These social media influencers were invited to a series of policy briefings with high-level White House and administration people, such as the Vice President, J.D. Vance, such as FBI Director Kash Patel, such as AG Pam Bondi, and they even spent some time with President Donald Trump himself today, got a tour of the Oval Office, again, had some policy briefings. But then what happened is they were given these binders. And they weren't expecting it. They weren't pre-briefed on it. And I know that prior to this event as well, because I actually spoke to some of these people about what happened today. Yesterday, they told me they were going in for these policy briefings. So they didn't expect any of this. And they were given these things. And then they were kind of paraded in front of the national media, who were there really to cover the UK-US conversation that was taking place on the White House lawn. But it turned out that the president himself was in a room, the Roosevelt room, with these binders that actually contain his name as part of the Epstein files as well. And that is, of course, an extremely embarrassing development. Now, it's nothing new. We know that President Trump was in Jeffrey Epstein's phone book. That information was released 5 years ago. There's nothing new, particularly in these binders whatsoever. I've spoken to people who have had them, who have gone through them. I've seen people live streaming from them today, this afternoon as well. And nobody can find anything new in this information. So what it turns out to be is kind of a PR stunt by the Attorney General, by Pam Bondi, to try and kind of adhere to this promise that she's now made for a couple of weeks now, that she's going to get these documents released and she's going to release the Epstein files. And so it says phase 1 on the front of this binder. But it turns out that phase 1 is information that was already publicly available anyway. So now people are scratching their heads, right? What is going on here? Why isn't she releasing the information? She went on Jesse Waters yesterday and she said, I've got the client list on my desk. And then this afternoon, of course, she comes out and sends a letter to Kash Patel saying, well, actually, we haven't been given the information by the FBI. So which is it? Because right now we've got Schrodinger's Epstein list. It does and it both doesn't exist at the same time, and people are starting to get curious about what's going on there. I will say, in the defense of these influencers, you know, they go in there for a series of policy briefings. Of course, you know, I was about to say, of course, you get invited to go to the White House, you go to the White House. I actually got invited to go to the White House today and I couldn't make it. That was for the UK-US event, not for this event this morning. But they were only told after they were pictured with these binders by the national and international media that, hey, these things are like off the record. We don't want the public knowing that we've handed this to you yet because we're preparing a release on it for later this afternoon or early tomorrow morning, or whatever it is. And so it just turns out that, you know, a lot of people on the internet I saw this afternoon suggesting there's this wide conspiracy by all of these influencers. Maybe they're pedophile sympathizers and all of this. It turns out it's just good old-fashioned clusterfudgery.
Well, you pick up on something interesting there, right? Because now their defense that they're coming out with is essentially saying that certain FBI offices, I believe they singled out that of New York, are the ones who are withholding the documents, which doesn't quite square with what we were told, like you just alluded to last night on Fox, the interview between Pam Bondi and Jesse Waters. So I'm just curious your thoughts there, and just to bring one other element of interplay here, that you have, of course, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who's leading the declassification task force, tweeting out, and I quote, "I nor the task force were given or reviewed the Epstein documents being released today. A New York Post story just revealed that the documents will simply be Epstein's phone book. This is not what we, the American people, asked for. Get us the information we asked for instead of leaking old info to the press." So it seems like there is some communication breakdown. I'm curious where you think the holdup is here. Is it a DOJ problem? Is it a comms problem? Is it Congress just not liaising with them? What's sort of the root of the issue in your opinion?
I think there are probably three answers to that question, and the broader answer is a part of each three of those things. Number one, AG Pam Bondi is getting over her skis on this. You know, she wants perhaps to release this information, but she doesn't have it. She's going on television to claim she has it in order to get it released to her. She's doing this stunt at the White House today without kind of reading the White House in to this wider situation, again, in order perhaps to get this information out. And of course, you have to understand that there are still holdovers in the federal government. You know, all the people who are working those desk jobs at the FBI and the DOJ, they have not all yet been fired. They have not all yet been extricated from their positions. And so there are people in there who are obviously trying to block this, trying to redact certain things, and she's kind of fighting against that. So I won't go so far as to say right now that this is, you know, a resigning offense for her. But I do think that people are starting to query, like, hey, listen, just be honest with us. If you can't get some information out that you're trying to get out right now, then you must tell the public that. The front of the binders today, Natalie, said most transparent administration in U.S. history. So let's live up to that promise and actually tell them. I don't want to hear that this is some 5D chess that they're playing and that, you know, they've got to jump. And it's like Elon going like, oh, I was doing a pulse check on all these people. Like, let's actually have the conversations out in public so that ordinary members of the public, especially the Trump voters all around the country, can make their minds up as to what is happening. There is such a thing as being too clever by half. And I think perhaps AG Bondi is falling into that trap. Now, listen, it's not an easy job. And this is perhaps the hardest part of the coalface you could possibly have is the Epstein list, right? It's up there with the JFK files. It's up there with, you know, all other manner of either conspiracies or cover-ups that have happened in America for the last 50, 60 odd years. So I'm not ready to point the finger at her and say, this is a disgrace, you have to go from your position. But I am ready to stare down the barrel of this camera and say, get it together fast.
You know, we got to be all over this, I'm sure. Stephen K. Bannon would agree. Raheem, we got about 2 minutes before I got to let you go. I'd love just your sort of general synopsis. We're going to have Mike Benz join us after the break to walk through it in more detail. But, of course, the meeting today, your home country, we thought it would only be fitting to have you on.
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit. I was happy, by the way, with what VP Vance did today, accosting Sir Keir Starmer over freedom of speech issues in the United Kingdom. But I do think Trump went really easy on him. And of course, he's playing the diplomat. He's the president of the United States. He knows he has a role to play here that is kind of above the partisan political fray, and that Sir Keir Starmer is a guest in this country. And Donald Trump, as you and I both know, and a lot of this audience knows, is an amazing host. He loves hosting people, likes putting people at ease. But there were several flashpoints that stood out to me on this. One is the Chagos Islands deal, which may mean nothing to this audience. We've had Nigel Farage come on and talk about it before. This is about a deal for a very, very important base in Diego Garcia that the Mauritians are trying to sell to the Chinese. And President Trump suggested that this deal may actually get his support. That would be a major geostrategic error on this administration's part and on the part in the wider sense of United States national security. I also think that, you know, there wasn't enough. Because Sir Keir Starmer, remember, is the one who presided over the grooming gang scandal. He's the person who is cracking down on Christians who are opposing abortion in the United Kingdom. He's the one cracking down on free speech in general. He's helping Islamists all over the country. And so I would have liked a little bit more JD attitude in there to say, hey, we hear you, we're your friends, but these issues must be rectified before we're willing to march in lockstep with you. And while I have a second, I want to encourage everybody to go to thenationalpulse.com/war room and sign up for more of our reporting.
Well, I was going to ask you to do that, but you beat me to it. So I'll
Always
give you
ahead of
one
the
more
curve.
chance. We love the National Pulse. It's where I got my start. I find myself, more and more retweeting a lot of the old stories that I published because they're only becoming increasingly relevant. If people want to follow you, Raheem, where can they go to do that and get all the National Pulse scoops and stories? One more time.
Yeah, at Raheem Kassam on all social media and thenationalpulse.com. We are 100% user-funded, no corporate kickbacks, no billionaire kickbacks, no political cash, all 100% from you, the people.